Hey guys, what's going on? Bobby Krug here, and welcome back to a brand new episode of the ATA Network podcast. We are back for another episode. It's a brand new week, new episode. And before we dive into today's episode, I just want to thank you guys for all the support on this return of the podcast. I mean, we've had a lot of tremendous guests on the show. Matt Zagaitis, Evan Stammer, Avery Schwalm, Alexander Searle, Carter Fartuck, just a lot of incredible people telling incredible stories. And for me, you know, it means a lot to see all your guys' support and enjoyment of the show. But it's also cool to get the chance to sit down and talk to some of these guys. You know, Alexander Searle is a great example. You know, it's a guy that me and him aren't in the same trajectory, always doing the same things together. And we have a past, we have a history, and we had a little bit of a rivalry. And to be able to kind of sweep all the hard feelings under the rug and to be able to, you know, call him a friend now simply because we had a conversation over this podcast platform. I mean, I think I value just those relationships and being able to kind of get back and talk to some of these people that I really don't have a reason to talk to otherwise. So, and to be able to promote these guys and all the cool stuff that they have going on behind the scenes is very cool. So, you know, while I do appreciate the support on the shows, there's also a little bit more of a personal meaning behind the scenes. So once again, thank you guys for tuning in and enjoying the show. And all those previous guests that I just mentioned, they're all racers in the community. Some of them just in karting, some of them moving up to Formula cars, and some, you know, experienced car racers have been out of karts for many years now. Today's guest is not particularly a racer, but is no foreign guy to the motorsports scene. I met this guy at, and I'm sure the title of this is going to pretty much give this away, but I met him on the road past year in the summer for the Superstar Racing Experience, which if you guys, you know, were living under a rock during the summer, there was a big new racing series that was run this summer, kind of a brainchild between Ray Evernham, Tony Stewart, to get all these legends of racing back together in a spec series. Think of like an IROC, you know, and bringing all these historic drivers. You know, I can't name all of them, but, you know, Tony Stewart, Michael Waltrip, Elio Castroneves, and some young guns, Ernie Francis Jr., Haley Deegan, bring them all out into a spec car and bring them to the short tracks of America. And I remember seeing the ad on Facebook or something like early on, and this was before I got hired by Skip Barber. And I'm like, wow, this is going to be cool. I can't wait to sit down in front of my couch and watch it. And fortunately, just by the way of in what we'll talk about here in the show, I was able to kind of be a part of the roadshow for 5 of the 6 events. Today's guest, though, he was there for all 6, and he played a pretty vital role, I would say, to the marketing aspect of the series. You think of all these big series, NASCAR, IndyCar. What really, you know, helps promote these series and get the message of the series out to the general public that may not be at the track is by way of photos and video content. And this guy that I have on the show today is a photographer, the official photographer of the Superstar Racing Experience, which I'm sure he probably holds that title very near and dear to his heart. But he's done a lot of things besides SRX, or whether it be, you know, a track photographer at Lucas Oil Raceway, or even working with Kyle Larson. He's done a lot of cool things. So it's going to be really exciting to sit down and talk to this guy. And it's really exciting to bring him on. You know, like I said before, he's not necessarily a racer, but he is no stranger to the racing scene in this podcast episode. Super excited for it. Super happy to have this guy on. But without further ado, let me introduce Wayne Riegle to the ATA Network podcast. How's it going, my friend?
It's going good, Bobby. I hope I live up to that little intro there, though.
Yeah, I always humble all my guests when I introduce them because they're like, wow, I wasn't expecting that. But, you know, on top of all those accolades, happy to call you a friend of mine. So I'm really excited to have you on here.
Yeah, excited to be on. You know, we both have a nice background in media and share that wonderful title of a communication degree that really means very little to most people. But hey, we got it, right? We got that piece of paper.
Yeah, we got the piece of paper, although I think both of us probably knew what we were doing before we got the piece of paper. But just before we kind of get into the SRX thing, because I think that's kind of the bread and butter of this show, let's get you kind of up to speed with the listeners. You know, let's kind of hear who you are and how you got started in racing and where that or how you got started in photography and where that passion for racing came from. So kind of get us up to speed on Mr. Riegle.
So, born and raised in Ohio, Northwest Ohio, surrounded by dirt tracks, sprint car racing. Grew up going to Eldora and Millstream Speedway, which is now closed. My dad used to race street stocks, what they call street stocks now, back in the 70s, before I was born. I'm old, but not that old. And just going in the local tracks growing up, seeing people like Frankie Kerr and Jack Hodenshield and Steve Kinzer and all those guys, and just kind of got bit by the racing bug at a young age. And then, like you said, I am not a driver. And Bobby knows this from experience because we raced out at Whitelands when during the SRX tour, and I was last every single race by a lot. But to my credit, I also had about 100 pounds on all you guys racing out there too.
Right.
Yeah, the photography thing. My dad actually passed away when I was 16, and he was always big into racing. My family big into racing, and I just wanted to try to find a way to carry that on and kind of be more a part of it. And I just started to carry around the camera in the pits. Like if you ask a lot of the photographers in motorsports, that's how they start. You got a little, for the older guys, got a little box camera. For me, it was a little digital camera with the digital camera that actually was a floppy drive camera.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's how far back. And now I look at those pictures and they look like Monet paintings. They're just all pixelated and stuff. But that just kind of fell into it and started to get better equipment and go to the dirt track races where it was easier to get some access, and just kept on building there. And then through social media was able to kind of have a little bit of a following and get the eye of a couple drivers, like you were saying with Kyle Larson back in about 2011. Got hooked up with him through Janet, his mom, who was doing all of his PR and everything back then. And she started using some of my pictures. And then I kind of rode those coattails for a little while and got to shoot some cool stuff. Like when he won the 4-crown at Eldora, when he won all 3 of the USAC features, I was there and got to shoot that, and got to shoot his the year he won the NASCAR truck race at Eldora, got to shoot that in Victory Lane, and then got hooked up with the Tony Stewart's All-Star Circuit of Champions. I've been shooting for them for about 4 years now. And that started as, okay, well, we'll get you in for a little bit. And then they started using more of my stuff, doing a little bit of work for Speed Sport. It's still just mainly in the dirt, sprint cars realm of things. And I got to shoot that Bristol dirt race with the World of Outlaws last year for Speed Sport, and just more of like hit and miss little things here, just kind of staying around Ohio, around the dirt track stuff, and just kind of, for lack of a better term, hustling, going here, shooting this, and the thing is through the photography, I've learned to enjoy motorsports outside of my, Northwest Ohio dirt track, sprint car, a little bit of NASCAR and a little bit IndyCar kind of thing, and start to enjoy road racing a lot more, drag racing a lot more, pavement racing. So just trying to make a little bit more out of this and kind of break out of that mold. I'm kind of tired of, not really tired of, but it's not, when older I get, it's not as much fun to have to take a shower after you go shoot all day in the sun and the dirt.
No, that's super cool to hear your story. And one of the things, and this isn't really in our script, in our lineup here, but I think that you are a good person to kind of get some sort of advice, whether it be just a couple little nuggets of advice. But you had this passion for racing, you've had this passion for photography, and a side note, I think it's cool that you're carrying that on because of your father and trying to keep that legacy, if you will, alive. And I think that's kind of a common theme in motorsports. My love and passion for racing came from my father, laying down on the couch with him at 1 year old, 2 years old, even before that, a couple months old, and watching the NASCAR races. and always, being surrounded that atmosphere. And, we had a karting banquet not too long ago, and we talked about, how important it is, silly simple to an outsider, as just an automobile, 4 tires, an engine, and it's just a device that we use to get to point A to B. But for some of us, it creates these memories, these long lifetime passions. And we meet people, it's that connection that you had with your father. And, for me, the connection I had with my father, all of my friends that I have, I wouldn't be talking to you if it wasn't for motorsports. So I think it's really cool that something as simple as motorsports can really dictate your lifetime of what you want to chase with your life. That was my side note. So what I was getting at, though, was you are a photographer that has now done a lot of really cool things. And there's a lot of people that don't know how to get started in something like this. A lot of people don't know how to get started in racing. And I always tell them, go to your local kart track, go to your local dirt track, meet people, have connections. And the same thing goes for like the media thing, start small, do a lot of freebie-ish work. And, if you shoot good stuff, people are going to come and people are going to want you to do stuff. So what are some advice that you would give to, a young media guy that could be listening to this that wants to get into the industry? Where do you start? What do you do? How do you end up becoming to kind of like where you are today?
Hard work, luck, shoot. So what I did was don't go out and buy the most expensive equipment. Get some used equipment, get something that's a little bit, not $10,000 worth of equipment for it out, because photography is one of those things where you can go in full bore and spend gobs of money.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to spend gobs of money, especially if you're starting out. I just started by getting like a camera I could afford that took, decent quality, do some research, and then just go to the track, get a pit pass, start shooting, pit stuff, the human interest stuff, drivers talking to people, the cars, try to find different angles, try to find something a little bit more picturesque. Don't start with the action stuff. The action stuff you're going to need a little bit more access to. And then post that stuff, post it. And then a big thing too, and Bobby, you probably know this too, is when you do post on social media, make sure you watermark that stuff, because
Mm-hmm.
people are gonna even if they do quote unquote steal it, if you have it where you're watermarked, they're still gonna get that credit, right? But don't if you want to do motorsports photography or whatever, that's great, but do other things too. Shoot stick and ball stuff, nature. Just kind of open because the thing with photography, with most art forms, is it's vast and there's all kinds of stuff. One of the things I like to do to unwind, and it actually kind of helps me in my motorsport stuff, is I go to the zoo and I take pictures of zoo animals.
Mm-hmm.
And it helps me play with light. It helps me with actually, it sounds weird, but it helps me with taking pictures of people, like portraits, and it helps me with those candids, because what's more candid than an animal? They're not going to listen to you. They're not going to take direction.
Right.
If you got a lion on the other end of a piece of glass, it's not going to that's not going to take any direction from you. Like I said, just shoot. That's, I've had people come up to me and ask me, what's the best thing to do? Get your camera, go shoot stuff, do some research, look at YouTube, there's all kinds of great videos on YouTube about that. And then on the second thing, don't just shoot the picture, go in and edit the picture too.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure that you know how to edit. And just like the basics of your camera, know your equipment. Just like with racing, you can't just jump into a race car and then, do the fastest lap. You got to understand how it works. You got to understand the ins and outs of it.
It's very important, like you said, to know your equipment. I mean, I don't know how many people that I know that you shoot on full auto or whatever, you're not getting the full potential of the camera. And like also you said, where you do stuff to the photos after you shoot them. I haven't really known until a couple of years ago how important, Lightroom, for example, or whether you use Photoshop, whatever you use as your, a color grading software, how important that is. I mean, it really transforms the photos. And the other cool thing about a watermark too is like, if they don't want the watermark, they got to come to you to end up buying the photo. So they can rip and steal your photos all day long if you ain't got no watermark. But as soon as you watermark it, it ends up opening up some more opportunities for people to actually want to, purchase the images instead of just taking them. You did mention one thing there. One last thing that we'll talk about before we kind of dive into SRX is your love for shooting nature, right? Where did that come from? Because I think of you as primarily a racing photographer, but if you follow Wayne on Instagram, like will be plugged in the link dump, and he'll plug at the end of the show. That's kind of a secondary thing on your account. So how'd you get into shooting nature?
I've always had a love for animals. I grew up on the farm. I was a farm kid. So, Future Farmers of America and all that fun stuff. When I started out doing the racing photography stuff, that was my escape. And once that kind of started, the ball started kind of roll with that, and it became what I call my professional hobby. Because I'm not making money out of it. I still got a day job. I had to find another outlet, another escape. And I just kind of carry my camera everywhere. And I just started taking pictures going to the zoo. And one day came back from the zoo. My wife and I are members of the Columbus Zoo here in Ohio. And came back and I was looking through them like, these are actually pretty good. And I put them in the Lightroom and mess with it. And I was like, ooh, no, these are like really good. Not to toot my own horn or anything. It's like, you know what? This is fun. I mean, I'm getting exercise. I'm out in the air. I get to people watch because, the zoo is one of the best places to go people watching. You get to be with the animals and everything, and then use that artistic side of things. Because like my style of, especially for in the beginning, my style of racing photography has been very photojournalistic. And doing the zoo stuff has kind of opened up the more artistic side of it, because I'm not just worried about, covering the race. I can just kind of make it almost like an art form. Now, I'm not saying I'm anywhere near some of the guys, the top of the line guys on the out there that are literally doing like works of art with their photos. But the zoo stuff kind of opened that up. And the thing is like I'm on my own time schedule. I can go, and being on the road, I can hit different zoos I've never been to before. It's nice because I like talking to people, and if you have a nice camera at the zoo, most times people are like asking you questions and want to see, ooh, what did that look like, and all that. So you get kind of like that kind of camaraderie with the other goers of the zoo, and you get some cool things, and it teaches you patience too, because it's not to the point where my wife hates going to the zoo with me now, because it's not like, okay, there's a lion. I'm like, okay, here's the lion. We're going to be here for 15 minutes until it turns just right for me to get this, because the sun's coming out here and then there's a shade there, and I'm going to wait for it to get right there. So instead of, you go to the zoo for a couple hours, I'm there from the time they open to the time they close. Because the sun changes and you got to do all this other stuff. So it's a more challenge. It's a kind of out of the box kind of thing. And I don't know. I just love the smell of the zoo. I love the sounds. I love the animals. It's just kind of nice little, like, it's my happy place outside of the racetrack.
And there's a lot of things too, like that you touched on there, that transfers over to the racing side. The obligation to deliver on photos. And if you're still trying to learn, you may not be able to successfully do your job. And going to the zoo and having kind of that secondary outlet of creativity, it also acts as a test for you to be able to take stuff that you learned there and be able to take it and transfer it over to the racing side. So I totally understand that. And I think that's super cool. And I think that's another good piece of advice for other content creators to kind of take away of, being able to expand your horizon. Because who knows, maybe a zoo would have contacted you and wanted you to go off and get a paid gig to shoot something. So you never know when the door of opportunity is going to open. And that kind of drags me over to SRX. How did you end up landing this opportunity to be the photographer for the superstar racing experience?
Well, that's a fun story. So, like I said before, I'm one of the series photographers for the All Star Circuit of Champions, which is owned by Tony Stewart. And the first season, one of the stops on SRX was at Eldora, and that's an hour and a half away from where I live. And I'm like, okay, I like this like you were saying, I like the concept of this race series. I really liked the drivers that they got. The car was awesome. The fan interaction with developing all this was great. Like, yeah, this is the kind of thing for me. So usually I'll get connections through maybe a racing series, like because USAC was there at the same time, or I was trying to get on the media list through Speed Sport. And my contact through Speed Sport, the same day that I was going to message him about getting some access through them, he actually happened to lose his car keys, and he was on Twitter and saying, "Oh man, it's a horrible day. I lost my car keys at a racetrack. Can't find them." Whatever. He's having a bad day. So I'm like, "Oh crap! I don't really want to email him or message him when he's going through all this stuff, and I want to get everything lined up because I would need to get some time off work and all that fun stuff." I just so happened that the competition director for SRX followed me on Twitter. So I direct messaged him because I was like, what's the worst thing he's going to do? He's going to say no, right? So I messaged him. I'm like, hey, this is my portfolio and this is what I've done before and this is who I've shot for before. I'd like to get on your guys' media list. Is that a possibility? And he sent me, yeah, just email this other guy. So I did. And he came back, was like, what do you think about doing all 6? I'm like, all 6 races? Let me ask the boss, aka my wife. So I asked my wife, and she's like, well, what they say about luck? It's when opportunity meets preparation, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, go for it. Like, all right. So I emailed him back. It's like, okay, well, what's the details? And we kind of went back and forth. So this is on a Saturday night, going back and forth. And he's like, I'll let you know what our final decision is. So Sunday came and went. I'm like, okay, well, that's fine. At least that's kind of cool that they thought about maybe having me as the series photographer. Monday morning came, and I'm at work, and I'm working at that time I'm working at a nursing home as the director of an assisted living. So very stressful job, right in the middle of COVID,
Mm-hmm.
and just kind of not in a good place personally, really. And a guy that works for the All Stars, Tyler Altmeyer, he was like kind of my contact with like bouncing ideas off of for this job. And I'm like, hey, they haven't gotten back to me yet. Should I email them again just to kind of say, hey, did you forget about me? He goes, oh yeah, do that. So I emailed back the contact at SRX, and the guy goes, oh yeah, no, I was going to call you like 20 minutes from now to tell you that we're good. Everything's good. Everything that you asked for, we can do, and we're good. I'm like, awesome. He goes, oh yeah, I'll call you tonight. So okay. So then I have to go into my boss's office and ask for 6 weeks off of work. Well, that did not go well. Well, it went well, but she's like, we can't do that. I'm like, okay, well, today is my last day. She goes, well, why is today your last day? Aren't you going to give me 2 weeks or a month? And I go, no, because this is on a Monday, right? It's like, no, the first race is on Saturday, and they want me in Connecticut on Wednesday.
Oh my
And
God.
she goes, oh, so you have to leave like now. I'm like, yeah, 3 hours from now, I got to go home because I got to pack and I got to hit the road. Because Connecticut, Stafford was the first race.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, I think, 12 hours or 15 hours away. She was cool with it. My old boss was cool with it. I actually didn't just like leave. I kind of briefed somebody who's going to take my spot for a bit, and then I actually was in contact with the person that was taking over for me for about 5 months afterwards, so that maybe a little less than 5 months, maybe like 3 months afterwards. Just kind of walking them through. So I was filling that gap a little bit, because I'm not one to leave people high and dry, but opportunity, when
Right.
opportunity knocks, you've been doing it for 10 years, you got to answer that door. So, yeah, I got home and start packing my bags and driving all the way out to Connecticut, literally thinking that I'm going to wake up any moment. I'm going to wake up any moment. I'm going to go, because I stopped in New York in the middle of it. And I'm like, I'm going to go to bed here in New York. I'm going to wake up. I'm going to be back in my bed in Ohio. And it's going to be my alarm going off, and I got to go back to work. But no, it wasn't a dream. It was a real deal, man.
That is insane. And talk about, it's pretty abrupt how you got thrown into it. It's the same for me, as we'll get into, but I mean, in this thing, and most people that are listening to this has to know what SRX is, and we've explained it briefly, but, this isn't another opportunity to go, document a dirt racer. This isn't an opportunity to go to a dirt track. This is literally what was running second in TV ratings to NASCAR Cup. Like, it was consistently beating out the Truck Series, Xfinity Series, IndyCar in the States in TV ratings. This is a huge opportunity for you to jump at, and I didn't get on the scene of SRX until Knoxville. So I'm going to need you to kind of get me up to speed. You go to bed and you don't wake up in Ohio. You wake up in New York. You make the remaining drive to Stafford. What was that first SRX event like, and being able to rub elbows with all of these legendary racers?
So the first day, I'll just go with the first day, because the first day was wild. Usually I have a concept of what I'm supposed to do as a photographer. Oh, we want victory lane. We want, action shots side by side. We want, driver shots or whatever. The only direction I got was, I want you to show up and start taking pictures. I'm like, oh, so I just show up and start taking pictures. And the guy's like, yeah, you show up. I want you to show up and start taking pictures. Because what it is I was told that Ray Everingham was a part of IROC back in the day. And he's big time into racing history, like huge into racing history. And he regretted, this is what I was told, he regretted not having a lot of pictures of the whole thing of IROC, not just action shots, not just shots of the drivers, but the guys who are working on the cars and the stuff that happened around the tracks during race days and things like that. So I was told to just start shooting everything. So I arrive at Stafford on Wednesday, races on Sunday or Saturday, and they're unloading all the cars. I don't know anybody from anybody, too, by the way. I've never met any of these people in person. I've been around Tony Stewart, and I think he kind of knew who I was, but not exactly. I didn't know, like, the people I was talking to on the phone and stuff, I didn't know what they looked like, let alone met them in person. So I just pull up in my car and literally say, hey, it's me, I'm here, park my car, where to park my car, get out, get my camera out, and I literally just started taking pictures. From the time my car was in park to the time I started to take my first picture was maybe 5 minutes.
Wow.
So I started taking, and then these guys are just pulling these cars out of the trailers. And the first time I've seen them on the social media and all these things, and they're like there now. It's like, this is real. And seeing them, the guys put the stickers, the decals on the cars, and seeing these names appear on these cars, the Stewart and the Castro Neves and Tracy and seeing and Elliott, and seeing these names that are part of and Labani, seeing these names that are part of my childhood or at least young adulthood just appear on these vehicles, and thinking to myself, these actual guys are going to be racing these actual cars that I'm standing right here by, and I'm the guy who's supposed to take pictures of all of them. It's like if you remember back in the 90s, they had a bunch of those movies where like a kid would be in the majors, like, rookie of the year and stuff like that. That's what it felt like. I was
Right.
like, I got plucked from obscurity and thrown into this thing. And it was the most terrifying and exciting and terrifying thing I've ever experienced. Like I was on an adrenaline high, and that's before any of the drivers even showed up.
Right.
Like that. I mean, it was just a whole thing, and never been to Connecticut before, let alone Stafford. People at Stafford they were just like me. They were just like super. Everyone, all the tracks were super excited to just have us there, and I was super excited to be there. But all the crew guys, from day one, from minute one, I was part of it for them. I wasn't like an outsider. I was part of it. And to be honest with you, probably Stafford was the best one because of one person that wasn't there, and that was Bobby Krug. No, I'm just kidding. But no, I mean, it's the atmosphere. You talk about, Bobby. You talk about like the ratings and everything.
Mm-hmm.
No one knew though.
Right.
No one knew if this was going to succeed. So that first race, there was at least I felt it. There was a lot of like anticipation and like, and the thing is drivers just started to kind of trickle in on like Thursday and Friday. So you're just like walking around, and I'm getting used to being around the cars and just trying to find like really cool little things that I can take pictures of. Then you just start like, holy crap, that's Bill Elliott. He just walked in there, and or this is this guy, and this is this guy, and oh my goodness, it's Jeff Hammond's here now.
Yeah.
And Todd Parrott's here. Holy crap! Like even the guys that not even the drivers, like the people behind the scenes, or the crew chiefs and stuff were just people that I grew up watching on top of the pit boxes, and just taking that whole atmosphere. And then you add in the drivers, and then you add in the fans, and you just feel every day, that first race, every day, everything ramped up, ramped up until we got to race day. And actually day before we got practice day, which was interesting because we're out practicing. So the format is Kenny Schrader and Davis Tremy were the test drivers. So they shook down every single car to make sure that all the cars are similar, same. And then when the actual drivers came on the scene, they would drive the test cars for however many laps, just to kind of get a feel of the track. And then they get a couple laps in their race cars. So they did that the first time. And like I said, everybody was it was almost like the first day of school where everybody was getting to know everybody. They might, Tony Kanaan might have, in passing, talked to Michael Waltrip at one point in time, but they were getting to know each other a little bit more and kind of feeling each other out a little bit. So they're doing the test sessions, and all of a sudden all track stuff on the track stops, and all these SUVs come onto the track. And I don't know if you've heard this story yet.
I haven't.
So all these SUVs, oh yeah. So all these SUVs come on the track, and everyone's like, what's going on? And I forget who said it, but someone's like, oh, that's the governor of Connecticut. And I'm like, yeah, that's funny. It was the governor of Connecticut. He was there to do some press conference, unrelated. So if anyone knows Michael Waltrip, even on TV, or because he's pretty much the same that he is off TV too.
Yeah.
He just pretty much went over to the Connecticut governor and was showing him around the car. And the governor of Connecticut got in the car, and the governor's like doing it. And Michael Waltrip's just showing them everything. And it was like really surreal. I'm like, okay, I'm standing here, and Michael Waltrip's showing the governor of Connecticut this new car, and behind me is Tony Kanaan, and over there is Paul Tracy, and over there is Ray Everingham wanting to just get the show on the road, and just going and just making sure everything is like perfect, because that's what he does. But it was just like a really surreal kind of atmosphere that first day, that first week. And then we go in, and they have the race day, and the sun's setting. I mean, it's like perfect. It's like out of a movie. Got the sun setting in the background, and all the cars lined up on that front stretch, and that whole grandstand's just full of fans. And we're going to go live on TV live on CBS. Which when I first started, I was like, "Oh, that's cool. We're going to be on CBS Sports or something, right?" And they're like, "No, no, no, no. CBS, like CBS. We're going to be live on network television."
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. What did I get myself into? So we're live on CBS, and they got the one of the founders of IROC is going to give the command with all the partners that started this whole thing, minus Tony Stewart because he's strapped in the race car,
Mm-hmm.
and that sun's setting, and it was just like a surreal thing. And they're going and it's beating and banging because it's real racing. It's made for TV, whatever. But once those guys got and Haley Deegan got strapped into those cars, it was real racing. It was real.
Mm-hmm.
As you know, with probably some of the stories we're going to talk about later, it was the real deal. So I'm just taking pictures, doing my normal thing, and I'm like, holy crap, Doug Kobe, the local guy. A lot of people on social media and stuff thought, well, they're just throwing the bone to like the local guys, it just to kind of get them in there. Doug Kobe's leading the race
Mm-hmm.
and he goes on to win. I'm like, this is like storybook. You got all these like the Mount Rushmore racing pretty much, and the local guy goes out and beats all these guys. Yeah, that was awesome. And all that pomp and circumstance, and then victory lane and just doing everything, and then it all just calms down, just like most races, and I have time to think about it, and I'm like, cool. I was like, now I got to go to Knoxville. Now I got to go to Iowa, right?
Yeah. You got to do basically what you just did 5 times over again.
Exactly. And it's not like it's 5 times at that one track.
Mm-hmm.
It's crisscrossing the country. But yeah, that first race is always going to be special, just because of no one knew. Like I said, no one knew if they're going to people are going to show up.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and it was packed. I mean, if you look at some of my pictures, it was packed. And the fans were just loving it, they're loving it. And the racing was good and the show was good and the crew guys had everything just kind of lined up. And I'll tell you, one of the biggest things with this series is the fan interaction, because we changed the whole car, the way they looked, at least decal wise, from that first race to when you picked up with us in Knoxville.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just because people are like, well, we can't see the numbers, we can't see this. And Ray's like, okay, we're going to do this. We're going to change everything. And then we go to Knoxville and the cars look a little bit different. I mean, you can see the names a little bit bigger and you can see the numbers bigger, But yeah, driving back, because I'm an idiot and I love sprint car racing. So it was Ohio Speed Week. So, instead of going home for a day or two, I got home, dropped off my stuff, kissed my wife, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go shoot 3 sprint car races before I go out to Knoxville.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I shot at Wayne County Speedway on Monday. I went to Sharon Speedway, which is where this season is going to end, on that Tuesday. And Wednesday I shot not the whole race, but Waynesfield, which is 20 minutes from my house. Went home, slept for a couple hours, and then on my way to Knoxville. And who do I meet at Knoxville? Who do I meet at Knoxville?
I don't know. Who do you meet at Knoxville?
Well, okay. So I get to Knoxville, and as a sprint car guy, Knoxville is Mecca. Like, that is the place. I love Eldora to death, but Knoxville, never been there. And it's, they have the Hall of Fame there. They have like all this tradition there. I pull in there and forget I think it was Donato or somebody's like, hey, so one of the Skip Barber guys is going to help you this weekend with like shooting stuff and do some video and stuff. I'm like, okay. Who's this guy? So, and then this kid comes over, all like kind of, suave. He's got the hair just right, and he's got the beard just cut just right. And he comes over and he's like, hey, he's like, my name's Bobby. I'm like, what's up?
What's up, dog?
What's up, man? It's like, so you're gonna help me out, man? Because like at Stafford, I was running around like a chicken with my head cut off
Mhm.
because I was shooting everything.
Right.
That first weekend, I took 10,000 pictures
Which is an insane
over
amount of
what was that,
photos.
4 days.
Yeah.
It's an insane amount of photos, especially after you shoot all those, because shooting them is easy. Taking that many pictures is easy. Editing that many pictures is hard.
Mm-hmm.
But no. So I met this young whippersnapper named Bobby at Knoxville, and that's where our story begins, right?
Yeah, that's where our story begins. My story, as far as getting involved with the Superstar Racing experience, and for some context, I had only been with Skip Barber for like less than a month at this point, and I get a text message like the Tuesday or Wednesday before the Knoxville event. I knew that we had involvement with SRX, but I didn't really know what the full capacity of the deal was. We were actually the logistics provider for the Superstar Racing experience. So it was our haulers that were transporting the cars and hauling the toolboxes, and we also provided some mechanical support as well. We also had some of our Skip Barber guys, and I think some of the guys that actually wrenched on the TC cars, some like summer interns, if you will, and that's what we did for SRX. And I get this text message of a photo from our canopy setup, and it's got the Skip Barber logo, and it's like, my boss is like, hey, how's this photo look? Is this good to post on social media? And in my mind, I'm thinking, well, I do this, this, and this. And so I sent that over. But what I was really thinking is, you need to send me to this so I can be a part of SRX, and I'll take a better photo for you. And it was kind of like, okay, we'll do that. Haha. And the next day, it's like, okay, Bobby, how far are you from Knoxville? And I'm like, a couple hours or so. I don't know. And he's like, well, pack up your stuff and head there right now, please, because we need we need extra bodies down there to help out. And what I originally expected to be was mostly media stuff, which I did do a decent amount of media stuff throughout SRX, but I was kind of just like a spare hand. I'd have very limited mechanical experience, but I found myself on select days mounting tires to the cars, getting them ready for practice, or, rewrapping the cars after they've been repaired after some of these more intense races that we had. So they were pretty much throwing me at a lot of different tasks, and it was a really fun time to be able to hang out with all those guys. And while I have a lot of memories from the track, especially rubbing elbows with a lot of these legends, there was a lot of really funny, awesome things that happened off the track too, most of which I can't talk about publicly on a podcast. But no, it was just so cool to not only experience it with all these legends, but also with the Skip Barber crew and the SRX crew too. I know that it was kind of cliquey between the two of us. You had the Skip Barber people and the SRX people, but there was a lot of mingling between it as well. And so it was cool to be able to, when I first got there at Knoxville, to be able to kind of shoot some stuff with you. And I experienced a very similar kind of starstruck thing of like, holy cow, like I cannot believe, and it's like one of those things. It's like, it's almost like a you made it kind of feeling. Like, I don't know what the mountain looks like, but being able to document and shoot photos of, especially one guy in particular that points out to me is Tony Stewart. I mean, Tony was my guy growing up. Not to mention, I loved Castro Nevis on the IndyCar side of things. I mean, all these guys were super cool. Even Paul Tracy, as much as all the viewers and everything wanted to build him up as this bad guy, I mean, what would have SRX been without the Paul Tracy character? I mean, he added so much to the series. But without getting too far ahead of myself here, Knoxville was super cool. Never been there before. I remember us actually getting a chance to go through the museum there, and the little the side museum, like the museum storage, to be able to see some of the stuff they didn't have on display. So that was really cool to experience that. And what a crazy first event to get thrown into.
Right. I mean, it's the first time, like, these vehicles, you would think, okay, yeah, on pavement, I could see that. And then you're going to throw them on dirt. And then you're going to throw people who've never had any dirt experience at all, maybe in go-karts, right? Maybe in karting, in on the mix, And then we had one of the rising stars of NASCAR come and join with Haley Deegan. And what was that going to be about? Is it going to be, a circus around her? And she walks in, and it's just her and her boyfriend, who does all of her, helps her with all the social media stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And she was just like one of the like he was no prima donna, no nothing, and she was like so cool, and like you could tell. I've got this really cool shot of Jeff Hammond explaining the tires, like the dirt tires, which they use pretty much the same ones that the truck series uses on dirt to the drivers, and you've got big time drivers there, and Haley's just like leaning in and just listening to the whole thing. She's not out in the trailer or whatever, and she was interacting with people, interacting with fans. It was just so cool to see that too. But it was neat to see because sprint car guy, sprint car capital of the world. The support series. Friday night was 305 sprints and 360 sprints, and then the support series for the SRX Sunday night show or Saturday night show was 410s. So it's like, how is the sprint car world going to view this fendered car,
Right.
and these fender racers coming in on our turf other than Tony Stewart, and it was, I think it was first time Ernie Francis Jr., who we haven't talked about yet, but Ernie Francis Jr., like, who's on his way to some really big things this year, first year in Indy Lights.
Mm-hmm.
And first time he was on dirt, I think he said that he ran a micro once, and maybe like Millbridge or something like that, and that was it. So watching these guys and ladies on dirt, and at that time, if I remember correctly, Haley Deegan was the only one in the field who had ever won a stock car race on dirt of any of those people. Yeah. So, and it was cool. And then and then to top it off, being a dirt guy, one of the guest drivers that weekend was Brian Brown, big sprint car guy in that area, and then the man in the late models, the GOAT of the late models, Mr. Scott Bloomquist, who has this aura around him in the dirt world, and couldn't have been the most nicer, and was soaking it all in. It was really cool to see Scott Bloomquist kind of like, kind of just have some fun with it,
Right.
and interact with these people. Like I said, meeting Bobby, meeting you was definitely a big thing there. Like I said, I had to feel you out a little bit. I had to figure out like who's this dude and what's his angle.
Right.
But I'm just kidding. I think we hit it off pretty well, straightforward. But yeah, Knoxville was cool, man. Like it, and it's, I don't know if anyone listening has ever been to Knoxville. It's literally in the middle of nowhere, and the whole town is racing. I didn't go. I don't know if you went, Bobby, but there's a famous bar across the street from the track called Dingus, and let's just say I didn't go. So I'm a teetotaler. So, and I went after the races. I always went back to my hotel and called my wife, and had a little nappy nap and slept. I didn't do anything bad. But there's some of the other people might have had a little bit of adult beverages and had some fun there at Dingus. I'm not naming names, but
you can't see it right now, but my hand is raised. I know that you're not specifically talking about me, but my hand is in the air.
Oh, you did go to Dingus?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, man, Dingus. If anyone listening ever goes to Knoxville, you have to go to Dingus, especially if you enjoy an adult beverage. But yeah, we won't talk about Dingus because what happens at Dingus stays at Dingus.
Right.
But yeah, Knoxville was sweet.
Yeah, no, Dingus was really fun, and I think it's cool because you saw like Ernie Francis and Tony Stewart walking around with Dingus shirts on, and you don't know how bad I wanted to find a shirt exactly like that just to feel like I was a part of an elite club of Dingus goers. But no, that place, I mean, it's an illustrious place to Knoxville, but it's no different than my local small town Illinois bar. Probably no different than the bars in Ohio. Yeah, so. And I think that's one other different thing that we see between the 2021 schedule and 22 schedule, which I think is really smart, is they put all the dirt races at the end of the schedule because they realized how much of a pain it was to run dirt races in the middle of an asphalt, schedule, if you will. And the other thing,
we'll get to the reason why when we talk about IRP.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, IRP in itself is probably a whole episode worth of content. But no, we get to Eldora, and I've never been to Eldora before, and there's one thing that really sticks out to me about Eldora. I got one specific story about Eldora that is, I think, one of my favorite stories of my whole SRX experience. You did a really good job kind of explaining Stafford and Knoxville in really great detail, and I just don't. Everything happened so fast for me, and I just, in general, don't have a really good memory, so I can't pull out as much in-depth detail, but I do have a story, and Eldora is obviously infamously known as being Tony Stewart's track, right? He owns it, he operates it.
It's the house that Earl built, though. So Earl Baltus owned the track since the 50s, and then sold it to Tony Stewart. So I don't want to get any hate from the sprint car world. If yeah, Tony Stewart's associated with Eldora, and he's made it into what it is today. But it all started with Earl.
He wasn't the one to break ground there at the track for sure. But you've got Stewart's track that he owns with Stewart's series. And so Tony was, I think, particularly excited for this event. He wanted it to do very well because it's, his track at this point, his series at this point. And it's right before the race, and Tony's walking straight for me, and he's in a crowd of people right before driver intros. And he's pretty much like turning people down for pictures, turning people down for autographs. He's like, guys, sorry, I can't. Got to get to driver's intros, and he's not walking directly at me at this point, but he's walking straight away from people, and he looks over, sees me, and he's walking straight at me. And it's like in those movies where you have the lifeguards on the coast, and they're like walking in slow motion, and it's like my idol is walking straight at me, and he's looking at me, and his eyes get big, and he's like about to tell me something. Trying not to fangirl, trying to be like, okay, what's about to go down? Tony looks at me, and he's like, hey, I need electrical tape. Do you know where I can get some electrical tape? And I'm like, yes, sir. I'll get you electrical tape. And so I make a hard turn into the trailer, into the Skip Barber trailer, and I don't know where the electrical tape's at. So we had a brand new trailer. I didn't know where the things were in this trailer, so I'm going drawer to drawer. Literally was probably in there for a solid 4 minutes, but I felt like I went through every single drawer in that trailer. I come out of the trailer, look over at Tony. He's not looking at me. He's not waiting for me at this point. But I'm like, you know what? The trailer that's, two trailers over, I know where the electrical tape's at. I'm going to go get it from there because I actually know where it's at. I just freaked out and went into this trailer. Like, Tony Stewart's asking for electrical tape. I got to get this man electrical tape. I go down to the other trailer that I know, get the electrical tape, come back up to him, and I'm like, here's your electrical tape, Tony. And he's like, I knew as soon as I just saw the look on your face, and as soon as you turn around and walk in that trailer, that you weren't gonna bring me back electrical tape. And I was like, just so like wound up over it. But he was giving that good old like hearty Tony laugh about it. And every of SRX event after that, I carried electrical tape in my pocket and offered him electrical tape anytime that we crossed paths. And every time it would always get the same response out of him. What do you and without really not just telling that story and moving away from it, but Eldora was definitely the most, and I mean this in a very polite way, but a kind of a chaotic race as far as damage and rivalries and things of that sort.
Yeah, Eldora was Eldora, man. That's where I grew up. That's my, I guess you could say, home track. But yeah, that race was good old style dirt track and trying to throw sliders and beating and banging and tore a lot of stuff up. But you got to see Marco Andretti on the big half mile and Helio on the big half mile, Ernie Francis and Tony Kanaan actually raced in one of the Prelude races before, so he had a little bit of experience. But most of those guys had either been there through the Prelude to the Dream, which was a late model race that Tony Stewart used to run with NASCAR guys, IndyCar guys, and drag race guys back years ago, or they've never been there. Kind of give you a little story about that with not being there. Helio was talking, and I was talking to Helio because Helio is one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. Like, he will talk to anybody. And I was talking, and a tunnel that goes from the outside of the track to the inside of the track there at Eldora, and it's called the Love Tunnel. And I said, "Hey Helio, have you been?" He's like, "I'm like, this is my home." He knew it was my home track because we talked about it before. And he's like, "Well, tell me about it." And I told a little bit about the history of it and everything. And it's like, "Hey, have you been through the Love Tunnel yet?" He just stops, looks at me, and goes, "There's a love tunnel." I'm like, "Yeah, the love tunnel." He goes, "I must see this." I'm like, "All right, I guess I'm going to show Helio Castroneves the love tunnel at Eldora." And so we walk. I'm like, "It's over here. It's just a pedestrian tunnel." And as we're walking there, I tell him stories about when I grew up at Eldora, and you had to walk down the track. And anyone who's ever been to Eldora or even seen it on TV, it is very steeply banked. And back then, it was even more banked than it is today. And if it rained, you can find pictures online. You would lock arms. People would lock arms to get out of the infield. So they built this tunnel, and I take them over there. There's the Love Tunnel and everything. So we walk down the Love Tunnel and we go out, and it's one of those SRX moments. And Bobby, you know what I mean by this. We walk out. I'm walking this dirt guy at my home track, which the first time I ever went to Eldora, my mom was still pregnant for me. That's how far back my connection with Eldora goes. We're walking up out the other side of the tunnel, and we run into Marco Andretti, James Hinchcliffe, and PJ Chesham. They just came in. And the first thing Helio says is, "Hey guys, have you seen the Love Tunnel?" So like he was just loving the Love Tunnel, right?
Yeah.
Eddie Gotch's Love Tunnel. But that's like that, and the fact that my wife actually got to come and shoot a little bit with us at Eldora, that's my biggest memory of that race is Helio just looking at me, putting his hand on my shoulder and going, "There's a love tunnel. I must see this." So, but yeah, Eldora was just like beating and banging and just like old school short track, you know?
Mm-hmm. Well, and then we talked about earlier about how cool it was to see the performance of these, I don't know what you want to call them, the young guns or the people that got the seats by the prelim races most of the time. Cody Swanson, was the guy there at Eldora, and he actually finished runner-up in the main event to Tony. So another instance like you were mentioning at Stafford where the local guy got the chance to, go out there and perform, and he was dicing up there with Tony Stewart for a while. So that was another really cool aspect about that Eldora race.
Yeah, I truly believe that Cody Swanson is the most talented guy that has not gotten the break in either NASCAR or IndyCar, like bar none. This guy, he can race anything, anytime. And again, one of those guys who is one of the nicest people you'll ever meet. Him and his wife, nicest people you'll ever meet. And what's cool for me too, and a lot of people didn't know who this was, but Jack Hewitt, who's one of my idols growing up, was actually at the race too. Tony Stewart, one of Tony Stewart's idols too, and Jack Hewitt. He's more known in the mainstream for his very straightforward language and his, you're darn right, I got time for an interview. Kind of line from back in the day, but that was cool to see that. And that's the cool thing too about this is with SRX is whenever we were in town, whatever racetrack it was, you had the legends from that area come out and be part of it too, not just on the track, but like, in the pits and just hanging out.
For me, it was also a thing of like, I wasn't very familiar with the dirt racing scene. I'm not much of a dirt racing guy. I don't really follow it as religiously. And you were telling me at the moment at the track how skilled Cody was. And meanwhile, I got another friend here back at home, Danny Odell, that's just really invested in dirt racing. He'll watch, at times he's got 4 or 5 dirt races on his TV watching everything across the country. And he was like Snapchatting me too, like, Cody Swanson is the guy. No, I mean, like you said too, the local legends coming out and supporting the series and, meeting a lot of cool guys. And that's just in general of SRX to be able to bring guys from all these different disciplines of motorsports together for one series it was a very unique experience to be a part of. All right, Wayne Riegle, we have a first ever occurrence here on the ATA Network podcast. We had planned on doing one episode, and the content was just so good, the meat was just so juicy that we can't hold it all into one episode. So this is going to be the first ever two-parter where I've sat down and actually recorded a podcast, but we've split it in half. And so we'll just have to have you guys come back and listen to the second part of this podcast next week on the show to be able to hear the remaining part of the Superstar racing experience that we had in 2021. So Wayne, we'll get into the more races. We'll get into the kind of our overall thoughts about the SRX series. But until next time, where can people follow you on the socials to be able to keep up with your journey?
All right. On Twitter, if you want to follow my racing stuff, it's at Riegle Photos, and Riegle spelled Riegle. And then on Instagram, it's the same because I like to keep it simple. Again, it's at Riegle Photos, Riegle Photos. But if you like animal pictures, I have a treat for you. On the Twitter, it is at Photos Zoo. And then on the Instagram, it is Riegle Zoo, Riegle Zoo.
Wayne, thanks for coming on the show, man. And I definitely give a huge recommend. Go check him out. Give him the follow. He shoots really good stuff, whether it be a literal goat or if he's shooting me as a race car driver. I mean, he's he's a talented photographer. So I can't say enough about you, my friend. Anything else you'd like to throw in here before we end the show?
Just that you need to watch the second episode of this because there's a big reveal.
Ooh, just throwing the line out there, reeling it in a little bit, giving them that tug, giving them that tease. Yeah, Wayne, I really appreciate you coming on the show here, and that's going to do it for it. So I just want to thank all you guys for tuning into it. And before we wrap it up, I do want to give a plug of my own, like I usually do at the end of the shows here. Check out the store at shopatanetwork.com. That's where you can find all the merch to be able to, represent the show that you love, represent ATA Network. And it actually helps us kind of keep the show going. It does cost a little bit of a fee to kind of get it out there to, the Apple Podcasts and the Spotifys and the Libsyns and the Stitchers and all those podcast platforms. So every little bit that you guys do to kind of help the show out, it goes a tremendous long way. So give that a look-sees if you're interested. I really do appreciate it. But I will catch you guys all on the next episode with Wayne again to kind of conclude this whole SRX thing on the next episode of the ATA Network podcast.